You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday, 12th of May, 2014. Welcome to our world. Pot and kettle, Nigel Farage, Doreen Lawrence and the UAF. Sadistic East Lancashire dad beat daughter for not reading Holy Book. UK cocaine use so widespread that traces found in water supply. Greek court clears Golden Dawn for EU vote. Migrants in Italy send a message, don't come. More Swedes dream of drones. Libya, at least 40 people die after migrant boat sinks off coast. Ukraine's president dubs East referendum a farce as polls show nearly 90% in key regions support independence. The sex-obsessed world of Brunei. Thought for the day in the name of UKIP. And finally, 2 for 1 day, Monday. UK News. Welcome to our world. Pot and kettle, Nigel Farage, Doreen Lawrence and the UAF. The mother of the murdered teenager Stephen Lawrence has distanced herself from a campaign group accused of violence against Nigel Farage and the UK Independence Party. Baroness Lawrence of Clarendon played down her involvement with Unite Against Fascism, UAF, whose members are accused of trying to silence the UKIP leader. The campaign group lists Lady Lawrence, a Labour peer, as one of its honorary presidents and says she's been a regular supporter and attendee at its meetings. However, Lady Lawrence insisted she was not closely involved with the group. Asked about Mr Farage and the UAF, Baroness Lawrence said, "I'm not the president and I don't really have a lot to do with the organisation." Speaking at her home in South London, she added that she'd been to a couple of the organisation's events a long time ago and did not wish to comment on Mr Farage's claims. Her comments were made after Mr Farage said UAF supporters have made violent attempts to silence him and called on the peer to disassociate herself from such actions. The UKIP leader said that repeated attempts by political opponents to disrupt his public meetings have forced him to hire bodyguards. He also suggested that the attempts to silence him were linked to senior Labour Party figures. In a BBC interview, Mr Farage said that his personal security had been threatened by supporters of UAF and another campaign group, Hope Not Hate. Wayman Bennett, the secretary of UAF, said Mr Farage's claims were absurd. World at 8. Join the Racist Club Farage if you dare to tout for nationalist votes this way. Sadistic East Lancashire dad beat daughter for not reading Holy Book. A sadistic Burnley dad who beat his terrified 10-year-old daughter up to 40 times with a ladle for not reading the Holy Book is facing jail. The 46-year-old told the girl to bend over before ordering her brother to hit her 120 times with the utensil, Burnley magistrates were told. He then took the spoon off the boy and repeatedly struck the 10-year-old victim as she sobbed and gasped for breath. The father, who also kicked the child in the hip, back and stomach, threatened the girl's mother with violence after she tried to intervene. He then said he was going to Pakistan and left the house, the court heard. Committing the father for sentence, the chairman of the bench said, "We feel this was clearly sadistic behaviour." World at 8. The trouble is that most, if not all, these Pakistani guys can go back to Pakistan, and frequently do, to visit other homes and wives. Why they are here at all mystifies me. A curry is, after all, just a curry. UK cocaine use so widespread that traces found in water supply. Cocaine use is so widespread in the UK that traces of the illegal drug can be found in the nation's water supply, according to a new report. The Drinking Water Inspectorate were investigating the dangers of compounds from the pharmaceutical industry contaminating the UK's drinking water and found traces of benzoylecgonine, the metabolised form of cocaine, amongst a number of compounds in the water that had gone through the purification process. The scientists also found traces of ibuprofen and caffeine. The UK has some of the highest prevalence of cocaine use in the Western world today, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime report, and the discovery of traces of the drug in the water supply supports these statistics. While the discovery of traces of cocaine should reopen debates about drug culture and criminalisation in the UK, the 4 nanograms per litre quantity of benzo whatever in the drinking water is unlikely to represent any danger to the public, according to Public Health England. World date. Danger. How about second-hand addiction? Point me to the nearest cocained water supply, please. I need a lift at the moment. European news. Greek court clears Golden Dawn for EU vote. Greece's Supreme Court has allowed the Golden Dawn party to take part in upcoming European Parliament elections, a party lawyer has said. The move came despite the imprisonment of 6 of its MPs, including its leader, over claims of involvement in political violence. Nearly all of the party's 18 politicians are under investigation over serious crimes allegedly committed over the past 2 years, during its rise to prominence. Under Greek law, candidates are only prevented from standing in an election if they are convicted of a crime, not if they are under investigation. We expected this decision. We have faith in Greek justice, lawyer Pavlos Sarakis told the AFP news agency. A date for the criminal trials has yet to be set. The party's European election list includes none of its parliamentary deputies. Among its candidates are 2 retired senior army officers. Golden Dawn says it's facing political persecution by Prime Minister Antonis Samaras' Conservative-led coalition government because it fears its popular appeal. World date. Good. I await the results of these elections in Greece with hope. Migrants in Italy send a message: don't come. Immigrants living in Italy have released a series of videos in a campaign to tell people thinking about making the same migration not to come due to the country's economic problems. The video campaign, which features 5 immigrants from Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Angola and North Africa, was ironically launched by the anti-immigration right-wing Northern League politician and European Parliament election candidate Angelo Ciocca. This is a country that's going through a very serious crisis. Things have been going badly for years, and even immigrants are feeling the effects, one of the immigrants says in the video. Italy, along with Spain and Greece, is one of the poorest countries in Europe, so don't delude yourselves. Now Italy can't offer anything to anyone. Don't come here because you will be sentenced to hunger, said another. World date. Need the Brits to wake up and do the same, but of course the Brits would go hungry to feed foreigners, wouldn't they? Not so much laid back as laid down, I fear. More Swedes dream of drones. A growing number of Swedes are applying for permits to use drones, with the police planning to make greater use of them too. For just a couple of £1,000 you can get your own camera-fitted drone or unmanned aircraft system UAS, as the devices are referred to in the United States. In recent years, the number of drone permits issued in Sweden has grown drastically. In 2013, the Swedish Transport Agency issued 275 such permits, compared to just 31 in 2010. Today there are even more permits out there, and the number of applications is growing, with most Swedes wanting to use the drones for aerial photography. Many real estate agents, for example, want to use aerial photographs in their ads. Anna Ahlberg of the Swedish Transport Agency told Swedish Television News. World news. Libya, at least 40 people die after migrant boat sinks off coast. At least 40 people died and 51 others were rescued after a boat carrying mostly sub-Saharan African migrants sank off Libya's coast east of Tripoli, the Libyan government said on Sunday. The vessel appeared to have got into difficulty around 37 miles, 60 kilometres east of Tripoli, Rami Kal, a spokesman for the Libyan Ministry of Interior, said. Libya's porous borders with its sub-Saharan neighbours and its proximity to Italy and Malta across the Mediterranean have made the North African country a common transit route for migrants trying to reach Europe. Many migrants pay more than $1,000 to criminal gangs for the sea journey from Libya, where the government struggles to control a country still full of weapons and brigades of former rebels since the civil war that ousted Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. World date. Trust the Muslims to cash in on the Africans' panic and greed. This whole thing should be halted by force if necessary. The only people benefiting are the criminal gangs. Ukraine's president dubs East referendum a farce as polls show nearly 90% in key region support independence. Headlines out of the Ukraine are: acting Ukraine President Alexander Tereshkov says vote is propaganda to cover up murders. Donetsk announced that 89.7% of its citizens want to leave Ukraine. Luhansk is expected to announce 94 to 98% vote in favour of secession. East Ukraine's breakaway authorities now expected to declare independence. Russian President Vladimir Putin still said to be considering his response. National Guard opened fire at polling station in Krasnoyarsk, East Ukraine. 2 people were seen blooded and lifeless in the attack's aftermath. Russian reporter investigating vote fraud is kidnapped in East Ukraine. Ukraine's central government and the West have called the votes illegal. World date. At least they have referendums over there. We're still waiting for ours for the EU. Cameron promised one back 5 years ago. Why are we waiting? The sex-obsessed world of Brunei. Under Sharia law, the following is considered criminal behaviour, punishable by fines, jail, amputation of limbs, public flogging or death by stoning. Absence from Friday prayer services, becoming pregnant out of wedlock, wearing indecent clothing, and for women, refusal to wear a hijab, employing a non-Muslim babysitter, the use of the word Allah by Christians, and the discussion of the faith by any non-Muslims, publicly eating or drinking during Ramadan, theft, homosexuality and adultery. The Sultan, now 67, has been slowly moving Brunei in this direction for decades, but this recent drastic declaration has no clear motive. Brunei is so rich with oil it's fully independent, nor is it a target of Islamic extremists. Here and abroad the brothers are infamous for their sex parties, and their harems composed mainly of underage girls. Indeed, the Sultan and his equally decadent brother Prince Jeffrey were dubbed constant companions in hedonism in 2011 by Vanity Fair. He lives in a palace with 1,788 rooms, 257 bathrooms, 5 swimming pools, a mosque, a banquet hall that holds 5,000 people and a 110-car garage. When he turned 50, the Sultan built a stadium, invited Michael Jackson to perform in it and paid him $17 million for 3 concerts. It's a radical double standard, says Gillian Loren, who wrote about her life as a member of Jeffrey's harem in her memoirs, Some Girls. They have more money than anyone else. I know they both have been married and divorced multiple times. It's really hypocritical. Last week, celebrities including Jay Leno, Ellen DeGeneres, Sharon Osbourne, Richard Branson and Clive Davis united for an unlikely cause, a boycott of the Beverly Hills Hotel, because its owner, the Sultan of Brunei, recently announced the implementation of Sharia law in his tiny Southeast Asian nation. World at 8. Clearly this guy and his brother are totally corrupt and out of control. Unfortunately they have the right religion for this sort of crassness and bad manners. God doesn't pay debts with money. Thought for the day in the name of UKIP. I had a classic phone call today and thought to myself, we have to be the only political party who has members, however well-meaning they are, who simply do not understand the method of the EU elections as regards the British National Party, and the dreaded name of UKIP also came up. I must tell you about it. In the middle of the news compilations, my phone rang. At the end of the phone was a very nice lady whose name I will omit, from the South East region. She explained to me that she didn't know how to vote for us in the coming elections because normally the BNP have no name on their ballot papers, and do they have to go somewhere else in her area to vote especially for the BNP. UKIP have their name on everything at every election, etc, etc. She also mentioned a form which she had not received. This turned out to be information from a friend on the postal ballot form, and no, she hadn't received it because she hadn't asked for it, bless her. I explained to her along the same lines that I'm telling anyone out there who has the same problem. EU elections are differently run in the UK to general and council elections, insofar that for the EU elections we have BNP candidates in every region in the country, and this covers all authorities and councils. Our name of BNP will be on every single EU ballot paper in every single polling station in the country. And if my memory serves me, the names of our individual candidates as per region, example, South West, North East, etc, will be on the papers as well. So in fact you can vote for the British National Party easily in this election, as we are standing a full tranche of candidates throughout the country for you to do just that. I ignored the mention of UKIP and asked her to pass this information on to other people who might not know or didn't vote in the last EU elections. These elections are different and they do count. Information over and on to UKIP. Where do I start? To lambast Farage, the mirage is just too easy. This guy practically falls over himself to become a laughing stock. But the media, those New World Order moguls and mogulesses, have finally latched on to the fact that he is in fact a robot, manufactured by the establishment, and by that I mean all the three main parties plus the men behind the scenes, to take the heat and sense completely out of the nationalist wing in this country. And to that end the media are dedicated and single-minded to the point of the ridiculous. It cannot have escaped even the most thickest of sheeples that Farage's time on the Gogglebox has increased 100-fold, and now even more so with the title of racist slipping in to give Farage a little bit more credence which he doesn't in truth deserve. As he isn't in fact a racist in the given sense of the word at all, and by this I'm not complimenting the man or the party. Farage is a money man, a second-rate banker, and yes, I did mean banker as opposed to what you thought and what I think. It is not for fun that the pound sign on the party badges, they mean it. Farage knows that to play the true nationalist card is to lose backers and donors who are mainly ethnic ones, plus the establishment funding and backing which is never given to the real nationalist party us. Because we are of course truly racist fascist bastards who would send everyone home ethos. Of course this is lies, but believable lies to sheeples who cannot think for themselves, so UKIP was formed to help them and the establishment take the guilt off the BNP triumphs of 5 years ago. And let's not be dim about it, they are succeeding in doing just that. 2000 and 2010 were our peak years. We had good publicity and even jokingly an article by Little John in the Daily Mail did homage to our Nicky G with supposing he would be the MP for Barking and Dagenham, and that did it. Hodge was given carte blanche to bus in thousands of Africans plus unlimited funds, and it worked. They weren't going to vote for a party who would send them home, would they? And that is when UKIP was pushed forward to become a byword in British politics, when we got too strong. But UKIP is a one-man band in reality. All of their organisers are very well paid and the party machine is very well oiled, and there is little they cannot afford to do as they've concentrated all their people around the EU. That machine which they also want to get off, and yet provides vast amounts of money for them not to do so. So voting for UKIP will just get more money and more people in the EU for them to cash in on and not care one jot for the actual act of leaving the EU. There is nothing further from their minds than that. The racist label only applies in Farage's case to the EU migrants, the white Poles and Eastern Europeans. He doesn't really like them. Africans, Asians and every other hue he wants more of in this country, and indeed doesn't think we can survive another day without more immigration. So where does the racist tag come from? Publicity every time. It will get, they hope, the ex-BNP voter to vote for another racist party which presents itself as having the backing of the populace and the media. In fact, it has been made to look very attractive to the man in the street. Farage's latest bleatings about being threatened by the UKIP do not bring him into the League of Gentlemen Nationalists by any means, although to the sheeples it might, which is galling for us true nationalists, as we've been pilloried for years by this particular band of morons, and neither the media nor the plods have bothered at all. But hey-ho, we obviously weren't racist enough, were we? However, I view UKIP as a desperate man's vote for desperate times, and people often take the wrong path in desperate times, as we all know. It's sad that the British establishment cannot come up with anything better than UKIP to offer the people in a country which has been practically destroyed by various governments, and latterly by a foreign set of government laws and rules which now dominate our socialist society and are gradually stopping the freedom of speech we enjoyed up to the last 45 years. Many of the people associated with UKIP are, to say the least, odd, and the media have hit with almost relentless accuracy on the racist comments with glee, to illustrate a point that is not there. If the BNP had issued racist comments now or 5 years ago, the Shiite would have hit the fan, and no gentle remonstrations of racism for us, but then again we're out and out neo-Nazis and worse, aren't we? It is a case of one media law for UKIP and clearly another for the British National Party, which shows who the media fears most, and it ain't UKIP. Amongst the many tales from the UKIP forest that have been ignored by the national press and TV in their rush to make UKIP look like a real political party instead of the money-making diversity machine it is, are a couple of goodies. One is, what happened to the £287,000 donated to Farage's local branch? Almost £300,000 in UKIP's party donations were paid into Nigel Farage's local branch and withdrawn as unspecified other costs, raising further questions over the party's funding. UKIP insiders have repeatedly raised concerns over this money spent by the party's South East branch in 2004-2005. The money was not used for campaigning, communications, property rental, utilities or auditing, and was described only as other running costs, according to accounts filed with the Electoral Commission. And Matthew Smith, the UKIP councillor and parliamentary candidate for Great Yarmouth, is facing charges of electoral malpractice. And the following comment by Richard North. I wonder sometimes whether all those people who tell me that they're not going to read the blog again because I have written, yet again, something uncomplimentary about UKIP also treat the legacy media in the same way. If they're going to be consistent, they should forthwith stop reading The Guardian, especially after this article, which features Chris Payne in Skegness, former leader of UKIP on Lincolnshire Council. Having fallen out with the hierarchy of UKIP, this man was expelled from the party in October last year, insisting that they saw me as a threat to the leadership. The party, he reckons, is run by Farage as a dictatorship. It's where it is today because of Nigel Farage, but I think it's no further forward than it is today because of Nigel Farage. Says Payne, look at UKIP's by-election results. If you can't win against Labour or the Conservatives, you're not going to get a seat in Parliament. Contrary to the idea that UKIP has recently soared, he thinks the party is actually underperforming. All the people in Nigel's circle are yes people who are beholden to him for money, he adds. And this is from the horse's mouth. Much worse goes on within the party than ever sees the light of day, and one of the tentacles it controls is property. And this sad story comes courtesy of one of our Kent on-the-spot reporters. I would tell it as best I can, even though I do not know the final outcome. All this comes from a Facebook account, so I will shorten it, and it concerns a worker for a charity known as Thanet Families in Need, who rent a property for their shop from UKIP. 23rd of March 1746. Can I just make a quick announcement regarding the UKIP promised funding? None of this has been received, and we are now following up some information given to us which we cannot broadcast. We have not received the promised help with deposit nor the £5,000 to £6,000 promised for January. This has had to be made clear as we do not want to mislead our supporters in terms of where our financial support is coming from. Don't worry, as we are always 2 steps ahead and have every faith to overcome every hurdle. We will keep you all updated. All the following texts comprise of how UKIP have let them down, and apparently they are not alone. UKIP make themselves invaluable at first in a community by letting properties to charities and donating to keep them open. But if a line is crossed or something happens, the money and support vanish into the ether. These ladies were offered this property for charity work in selling second-hand goods a couple of years ago and are now being given notice to quit by UKIP on Facebook on the 24th of March this year. Apparently UKIP wanted to interfere with the process and receive monies from this charity and withheld the above promised donation to teach them a lesson. How this sorry tale has ended I'm not sure, but the tale is how it started and why. Another entry was from another lady and it said, from Kate, this is not the first time I've heard of UKIP councillors promising funding to local projects and then withdrawing or failing to follow through. They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. So in short, if you're thinking that by voting for UKIP you'll get your country sorted, think again. If you think they will do what the other 2 main parties cannot do, think again. If you truly believe that a UKIP vote will let you off the hook as regards immigration, the EU, foreign aid, the Islamification of the UK, halal slaughter, education in our youth, benefits for foreigners, the diversification of the police and much, much more, think again. The media are doing a great job for UKIP. You can't deny it. They're practically never out of the news or the papers. But beware enemies bearing gifts. There is an agenda. Farage only wants out of the EU if he can get into Parliament as an MP next year. Then the publicity machine that is UKIP will fold. It has no reason to go on, except to pay for all the MEPs who will in turn pay into the party machine for a short while and then, like Farage, turn their backs on their communities and their country. Farage is a joke in the European Parliament. He is rarely at meetings he doesn't get paid extra for, and even votes against or abstains from voting on policies that directly affect the UK and you. He is in it purely for the money, and so are many of his cohorts. Money makes the machine go round very nicely. Thank you. So all the publicity, supposedly adverse publicity about racism, is carefully thought out and monitored. Look closely at your community and see just how much money has been put the way of your local council and how much will simply vanish if local people don't vote the UKIP way. UKIP do not have your well-being in mind and never have. They are, however, a very well funded and orchestrated money machine with a few racist tweaks to keep them interesting. So don't fall for it. Don't be that desperate to use a vote blindly or because your neighbour knows a nice UKIP chappie or chappess. Wolves in sheep's clothing come to mind. Don't be fooled. Think again. And finally, 2 for 1 day Monday. Misinterpretation. I was in a pub last night, drank quite a few, and noticed 2 very large women by the bar. They both had pretty strong accents, so I asked, "Hey, are you 2 ladies from Ireland?" One of them snapped back saying, "It's Wales, you frigging idiot." So I immediately apologised and said, "I'm sorry, are you 2 Wales from Ireland?" That's pretty much the last thing I remember. Wives like this one for some reason. In a dark and hazy room, peering into a crystal ball, the mystic delivered grave news. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just be blunt. Prepare yourself to be a widow. Your husband will die a violent and horrible death this year. Visibly shaken, Laura stared at the woman's lined face, then at the single flickering candle, then down at her hands. She took a few deep breaths to compose herself. She simply had to know. She met the fortune-teller's gaze, steadied her voice and asked, "Will I be acquitted?" You've been listening to The World at 8. I'm Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very good night. We will be off air Wednesday, but we'll be back with you Friday the 16th of May.